Hi there, my name is Megan Archambault, and my research project was about the collaboration between public and school libraries. I've called it Fostering Partnerships. First article I read was called Powered by Partnerships, and it really focused on innovative methods for sharing resources, providing access to materials and services, and getting library cards into the hands of as many students as possible. The article started off with a story about a librarian from Wapaka, public librarian, who wanted to work in the schools and make a collaborative effort there and was met with a little bit of resistance. And so she decided that she would build a relationship by connecting by volunteering for their book fairs, and she worked to join their PTO. And before you know it, she was connected to the school community. So when the librarian there retired and a new librarian was hired, that librarian was open to collaboration. She had already built a relationship with the school, and collaboration began. So as we stand now, she is able to go there on a regular basis, and she does book talks and story time and makes connections like that. The reason I went forward and told that story is because that is the overarching theme of all of the articles that I read. It is about collaboration, is about creating those relationships, building trust, taking the time and the effort to make a successful partnership. Also in that article was the ALA's new collaboration toolkit, and it gives examples of many successful partnerships that have gone on and are going on throughout the country, as well as step-by-step plans for moving forward with collaboration in your area. The second article I read was called Grade A Partnerships, and it really talked mostly about those successful partnerships across the country, but really about the forces that are at play between school administrators, librarians, and media specialists, and that how we need to think about how students' needs are evolving both in and out of school, and how a public library can really offer that wraparound literacy effect when we think about educating our kids on the whole. One of the most successful shared systems that were discussed in both of those articles was the Indianapolis Public Library system. It's called the Shared System. It's been in place for 150 years. Collaboration's been going on, but the Shared System now has 291 schools involved, as well as 2 art museums. They have the schools pay an annual fee to request books from anywhere in the system, and then they are delivered by the public library, which means that the kids have 2 million volumes at their fingertips. So the IPL puts terminals right there in the high schools, and then the school library catalog is also available at the public library. So resources are being shared back and forth very easily, and it has been very successful. The last article I'll discuss is the library life cycle, and this really talks about how the library is an ecosystem. They're thinking about how people are lifelong learners. So at the time when you're bringing your child to story time, you are effectively giving them access to their very first educator. So if we think about a public librarian as the first educator, as well as possibly the last educators of people's lives as they reach their senior years, that ecosystem has to involve the school library as well. So as you collaborate, and we think about that educational responsibility that we all have to literacy, this is where that ecosystem idea comes into play. Both public libraries and school libraries focus on the same goal, that everyone has the right to read, everyone has the freedom to access information, and it should be available for them. So this idea, this quote that really sums it up for me, says, both public and school libraries are community centers at heart with the same goal, to provide a safe, welcoming environment for all patrons and access to information in a variety of formats. And that means that the partnerships that we make provide ways to share resources, ideas, and programming to better serve students and promote reading. When we do that, we're stronger together. We create a true culture of civic partnership that can make a difference with our kids. And I really liked what Susan Benton mentioned and said, an integrated, intentional approach to learning has to begin early, draw on a wide variety of resources, and extend beyond the classroom. When we think about collaboration, of course, there are going to be challenges. And many of the articles, they discussed several of them. The number one challenge can be communication. If everybody isn't on the same page, doesn't have the same directive, doesn't have the same goal in mind, things can fall apart pretty quickly. And so communication becomes the key. Even the IPL shared system that's so successful, they talked about how sometimes they get bogged down in policy and not focus as much as they should on programming or new online resources. So communication was a key factor as a challenge to face. As far as raising awareness, this is that key advocacy part of all of our positions in the library world. You are always looking for ways to promote the library and what it has to offer and the connections it can make to our educators and administration, as well as to our community at large. As far as sharing resources, this is something that can sometimes become a problem if a librarian feels rather territorial about not wanting their items to be going out to other libraries. Sometimes that can cause a bit of a risk factor for them, and they may not want to participate, which can close doors. So I was really tickled to read something that one of the librarians at the Los Angeles Public Library noted, that after they had given out 500,000 library cards to all of the public library students in the Los Angeles School District, that people were worried about losing items. And she said, one, that would be amazing if so many students were coming to the library that our shelves looked empty. And two, the worst thing that would happen is that kids would have books at home. I couldn't agree more. Sometimes budget constraints can cause a big challenge. One way where the budget restraint actually caused an encouraging outcome was in Colorado. There was a school district whose budget was slashed by millions of dollars, and the public library stepped in and said, listen, we're going to provide the resources. We're going to create a collaborative effort here, and our students will get the resources that they need. So that was one time where the budget restraint actually turned into a good thing. Fine-free policy, this kind of goes back to the sharing resources. If students lose books and they are fined, sometimes that can cause stress and anxiety, financial stress for families, and will preclude them from coming to the library. So a fine-free policy was put into place, for example, at the Los Angeles Public Library System, where anyone under 19 does not pay a fine for books that are lost or damaged. It has increased their circulation. I kind of was following that myself and have moved forward with the fine-free policy at the Wauwatosa Elementary Schools. Students do not pay a monetary fine for lost or damaged books. Instead, they take care of their fines by taking on one of three responsibilities: either reading away minutes, work away minutes by working in the library, or adopting a shelf for a period of time. That seems to diminish the factor that, okay, you didn't bring books back, you have a fine, you can't check out, and instead create a system where you feel like you're safe and entrusted with learning how to take care of yourself and your books. One of the sad parts of the readings was that only 18% of librarians indicated a 7 to 9 range, with 10 being complete integration with the public library. So you can see that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done as far as collaboration. And I think one of the biggest factors that causes an issue with finding time for collaboration is the issue of time. Being able to actually go to the public library and say, listen, what could we do to make a connection? How can we serve you? How can you serve us? So when I'm thinking about those things, I've talked about some of the positive systems. There are others throughout the country that are working, and one of them that's underway now, and they're hoping works well, is called One Card in District of Columbia, where students are given a public library card, but it also doubles as their bus pass. So if proximity and mobility, things like that, are issues, perhaps that will take care of that issue. So as we think about all this collaboration, we've read the articles, where do we begin? We have to make connections. We've got to be able to reach out and say, can we bring the classes to the public library? Can the public librarians come to visit the schools and give us what they have to offer? Can we promote the public library offerings through school communication and vice versa? Can we invite public librarians to school literacy events? As you can see by the tweet on the side, this was where we had the public library come. They brought a hotspot. They were at a literacy event at one of our schools, and kids got library cards right there on the spot. We could also teach the kids how to use the public library catalog. On the other hand, the public library offers many ways that the school gets invited to the library by opening the doors with school shows, programming to provide literacy education, and homework help. So finally, my biggest discussion question after I talked to Ann Kissinger, supervisor of the Children's Library, Public Library of Wauwatosa, she says, well, isn't it just a given or an obvious cooperative effort? And yeah, to me it is, but is it to everyone? Should schools and public libraries combine their efforts to reach all readers? Is there any conflict or only complement?